All right, well, hey, we've been doing this series we started last week called Trust Issues, and we've been talking about this idea of trust, and how we know, come on, all of us have some trust issues. Come on, right? Raise your hand if you got some trust issues. Yeah, and many of us, for many good reasons, right? In fact, I told you last week the story about my dad. If you missed last week, go back and listen. It's worth it just for the story. But my dad would always mess with me and play tricks on me and do stuff like that, and so that's kind of why I have some trust issues, and yet, here's the thing, I mean, it kind of runs in the family because he did that to me when I was a kid, but then I became a dad. Come on, you know what I mean? And I was thinking about this last week. I was thinking about my two little girls, and when they were little, maybe they were about 9, 10 years old, something like that, we went to Six Flags, and my daughters, they were deathly afraid of roller coasters. Come on, any of you have kids that were like that or are like that, right? And so, man, they were scared to death of these roller coasters, and we were always trying to talk them into getting onto a roller coaster, and they just wouldn't do it until finally we were able to coerce them. I don't even remember. We had to bribe them or something, somehow to get them to get on the little kid roller coaster. You seen the little kid roller coaster, right? And they rode that a few times, and they were okay with that. And so we're like, hey, maybe it's time to level up a little bit, right? And move on from the kid roller coaster to a little bit bigger. And of course, we wouldn't make them get on the Texas Giant or get on the Titan or Mr. Freeze or one of the big roller coasters like that. We were like, hey, but maybe you could level up to just a little bit bigger. And so we said, how about we get on the Judge Roy Scream? How many know the Judge Roy Scream, right? Now, I don't know why I said Judge Roy Scream. I was just like, hey, it's not as big. There are no loops. It's not real high. It's not going to be a big deal. Get on. And so somehow we coerced them to get on. Well, it must have been a long time since I had ridden the Judge Roy Scream. Because if you have ridden the Judge Roy Scream recently, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is the roughest ride that you can ever even imagine. And I'm telling you, they were screaming their heads off. They were afraid. I was afraid, not for them, but for me, because I knew my wife was going to get me for getting them on. You know what I'm talking about? And from that point on, I think that was the last time they rode a roller coaster for about 10 more years, because they had some trust issues. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. And all of us have some trust issues for different reasons, because here's the thing. Sometimes the ride of life can be a little bit rough. You know what I mean? Sometimes there are some ups and there's some downs, and there's some things that we face in life. And when we go through those ups and downs, when we go through the rough patches in life, sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult to trust others and even to trust God. And that's what we began talking about last week. We would talk about this idea. We had this kind of bottom line that's kind of leading us through this whole series, and that is this, that in this next year and in your life, come on, you will be tested. Everybody look at your neighbor and tell them, come on, you will be tested. You will be tested. I would love to be able to tell you that in 2025, everything's going to go perfect. You won't have any problems, but that's just not true. Come on, in this year, you're going to face some tests, but here's the good news, that even though you will be tested, here's what we know: God can be trusted. Come on, isn't that good? That even in the ups and the downs and the rough patches of our life, when it feels like a roller coaster, in the test, we know that God can be trusted. And we began learning about this a little bit last week by looking at a guy in the Old Testament, a guy by the name of Joseph. And Joseph went through a roller coaster kind of ride in his life. Like, he was a guy who God gave him a dream, but things didn't exactly happen the way that he thought that they would happen. There were some tests, there were some rough patches, there were some ups, and there were some downs. But in the middle of it, Joseph always trusted the Lord, because God can be trusted. Even in the tests of our life, you will be tested, but God can be trusted. He is trustworthy. How many believe that God can be trusted, right? Now, today what I want to do is I want to talk about another part of Joseph's story, and I want to reverse this kind of thought just a little bit today. We know that God can be trusted, but I want to ask you this: can you be trusted? We know that God is trustworthy, but are we trustworthy? In fact, this is what we're going to see with Joseph as we look a little deeper into his story, that Joseph learned to trust God in the middle of the test, but also God allowed Joseph to go through some tests because God wanted to know, could he trust Joseph? That God had a dream for Joseph's life. He wanted to bring his blessing on Joseph's life, but before he could fulfill the dream, before he could bring his blessings on Joseph's life, he had to know, could he be trusted? And here's what I want you to know today. God has a dream for your life. And he wants to bring blessings in your life. But before he can bless you, he has to know, can he trust you? In fact, check out what the scripture says about it in this passage today that we read. The psalmist is talking about Joseph, and I want you to see what he says in Psalm 105 and verse number 19 today. It says, until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord did what? The Lord tested Joseph's character. Before he could fulfill Joseph's dream, before he could bless Joseph, he tested his character. He wanted to know, would he be trustworthy? And it's the same for every single one of us here today, that God wants to fulfill your dreams, but before he can bless you, he has to know, can he trust you? Are you trustworthy? That's what I want to look at for just a minute today. In fact, I want us to go to where we see this test in Genesis chapter 39. We're going to read the test that Joseph goes through together. It's kind of a lengthy passage of scripture. We're going to read the whole thing because I want you to get the story that's happening here. Genesis chapter 39 and verse number 1. It's on the screen. Let's read it there together. It says, and now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. And Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. And the Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered. And he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. And when his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord had given him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. And Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything that he owned. From the time that he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. And the blessings of the Lord were on everything that Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, kind of like your pastor, amen? I don't know why y'all are laughing so hard there. You're making me feel bad. All right. Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master took notice of Joseph and said, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master has done nothing. He concerns himself with nothing in the household. Everything he owns, he is entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I then do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke with Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. And she caught him by the cloak and said, come to bed with me. But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. And when she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called the household servants. Look, she said to them, this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came here to sleep with me, but I am screaming. And when he heard me screaming for her, he left his cloak beside him and ran out of the house. And she kept his cloak beside her until the master came home. And then she told him this story, that the Hebrew slave you brought us came to me and made sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. You talk about a test. Here's Joseph. God has blessed him. He's in charge of all of Potiphar's house. But then Potiphar's wife starts to try to seduce him and puts him in the test. And what is the test that he faces? It's the test of temptation. Everybody say temptation. Now here's what I want to be clear with today. God does not tempt us. In fact, the Bible is very clear about that. In James 1 and verse 13, it says that when we are tempted, that no one should ever say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Here's the deal. God does not tempt us. But here's what I want you to know. God can use the temptation that we face in our lives to test us to see if we will be trustworthy to receive his blessings. See, so many times we see temptation as a negative thing, and it is, because the enemy wants to use it to destroy you. But I want to show you today how the temptations that you face in life can actually be an opportunity, that God can actually use what the enemy means to destroy you to actually develop you and build you so that you can prove yourself trustworthy and experience His blessings on your life. In fact, what I want to show you today is, just real quick, I want you to see 3 positive opportunities that happen, 3 truths about temptation today. So if you're taking notes, write these 3 things down. We can see them from the life of Joseph and from our own lives today. And that is this: number 1, that temptation is an opportunity to know. Everybody say no. Temptation is an opportunity to know what's in our hearts. See, in those moments when the enemy tries to tempt us, you know what it can be? It can be a moment where we are able to get a glimpse inside of our heart and see what's really going on. Our response to the moments of temptation can actually reveal the things that are happening in our heart. In fact, James said it like this in James 1 and verse 14. He says, "But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their what? By their own evil desires and enticed." Some of us, when we face temptation, we say, well, the devil did it, right? But you know what the enemy does? He actually starts with whatever is already inside of us. Those desires that are in our heart, he uses those to tempt us. So when we face those moments of temptation like Joseph did, it's actually an opportunity to reveal, to know what's going on down inside of our hearts. In fact, I like what Rick Warren says about temptation. He says, temptation is often the fulfillment of a legitimate desire in the wrong way or at the wrong time. Think about this. When you are tempted, where does it usually start? It usually starts with a desire that's in your heart. And oftentimes, it can even be a legitimate desire. A desire that there's nothing wrong with. Like, for instance, say you have a desire to have fun. Come on, how many like to have fun, right? Nothing wrong with having fun. God made us to be able to enjoy our lives as long as we're having fun in the right way and at the right time, right? But here's what the enemy does. The enemy takes that legitimate desire and he twists it and he turns it and he tries to get us to fulfill it in a wrong way or at the wrong time. Nothing wrong with having fun except when it's time to work. Come on, right? Nothing wrong with having fun except when we're doing things that might feel fun, that wouldn't be in alignment with the values or with the things of God in His Word. So here's what the enemy will do. Oh, come on, it's no big deal. You're just having a little fun. Just go ahead and go to that party. Just go ahead and go out with those people. Just go ahead and do those things, right? It's just fun, and it's a legitimate desire that's in our heart, but the enemy takes it and twists it and tries to get us to fulfill it in an illegitimate way. Maybe it's a sexual desire. Nothing wrong with having sexual desires. God made us that way. Nothing wrong with sex. In fact, we're all here because of it. I'm just saying. As long as it is within the boundaries of God, the way that God created it. Come on. Inside the boundaries of marriage, one man, one woman, united together in marriage for life. Come on. Nothing wrong. Come on. Have all the sex you want. Come on, right? As long as you're in those boundaries. But what does the enemy do? He takes that legitimate desire and tries to get you to fulfill it in an illegitimate way at the wrong time. Oh, you're going to marry them. It's no big deal. You don't have to wait till you get married. Just go ahead and move in. Just go ahead and start doing that. Just go ahead and look at that thing online. Just go ahead. It's not that big a deal. And it's a legitimate desire that's in our heart that God even put there, but the enemy tries to get us. He tempts us to fulfill those legitimate desires in an illegitimate way. And so when you are tempted, here's what I'm trying to tell you, that it can actually be an opportunity to know those desires that are in your heart and to know what are the areas that I need to surrender more to God. What are the areas that I need to guard my heart more? Whatever areas that you are being tempted the most, they are clues to what's going on in your heart. Jesus said it like this in Mark 7:21. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts. So it comes from inside. So when I'm tempted, I get this opportunity to know what's in my heart so that I can surrender that and I can guard that. The Bible talks about in Proverbs 4:23 that above all else, we got to guard our hearts because all of our life will flow from what's happening in our hearts. So temptation is an opportunity. When you are tempted, it's an opportunity, number one, to know what's in your heart. But then notice number two, temptation is also an opportunity to grow. Everybody say grow. An opportunity to grow in your character. See, with Joseph, he needed to grow in his character. So as he went through the temptations, what was it an opportunity to do? An opportunity for his character to grow in the areas that it needed to grow, right? In fact, listen to it like this. Temptation gives you the opportunity for a choice. When you're faced with temptation, you can either choose to give in to the temptation or you can choose to do the right thing, right? And when you do the right thing in that moment, what happens is that area of your life begins to grow stronger. Every time that you choose purity over lust, you grow in your character. Every time that you choose faithfulness rather than being flaky, you grow in your character. Every time you choose to love and forgive rather than hold on to a grudge, you grow in your character. It's like working out. It's like lifting weights. When you first start lifting weights, those things are heavy and you have to strain and you pick them up and you go, man, I'm trying to do this. But after you do it a few times, you get a little bit stronger, right? And so you're going from the 15 pound to the 20 pound. Then you go from the 20 pound to the 25 pound or the 30 pound or whatever that looks like. And here's the thing about it, like you begin to grow, but where do you grow? You grow in the area, in the muscle that you are using the most. If you're doing curls, what's going to grow? Your biceps are going to grow, right? And it's the same way in temptation. How can God use the temptations that we face in our lives? Here's what he does, is the area that you are being tempted the most, that's the area that you have the most opportunity for growth. And so if you want to learn integrity, you want to grow in integrity, guess what? You have to have opportunities to be dishonest. And when you choose to be honest when you could have been dishonest, guess what happens? Your integrity grows. If you want to grow in humility, you have to have those times when you're tempted to be prideful. And when you decide to be humble in the moments when you could be prideful, what happens? Your humility grows. If you need to learn how to love more, you're going to have to be put in positions where there are times when people are hard to love, but when you choose to love them, even though they are difficult to love, guess what? Your love grows. See, this is what temptation is all about. It's not all bad. God can actually use the temptations that the enemy wants to use to destroy us to actually develop us and grow us in our character. Now, listen to this. That doesn't mean that we should put ourselves in moments of temptation because I just want to grow. That's what some of y'all are going to say. I was just in the back seat of the car with my girlfriend because I wanted to grow in my purity. No. In fact, we're going to see from Joseph, he did the exact opposite of that. But here's what I want to tell you. We should never intentionally put ourselves in positions to be tempted, but we will be tempted. You will be tempted. Just like this year you will be tested, this year you will be tempted. And in those moments, here's how you can look at it. Hey, God is testing. He's allowing me to be tested by the temptation that the enemy is bringing in my life because he wants me to know what areas I need to work on so that I can grow in my character. So that number 3, write this third one down. Temptation is an opportunity to show. Everybody say show. To show that I am trustworthy. Think about this. God wanted to know, can I trust Joseph? I have a dream for him. I want to use him in big ways. I put a dream in his heart, but before that dream can come to pass, I got to know, can I trust him with the dream? Let me just tell you something. God wants to know, can he trust? There's more that he has for your life. Some of us are going, God, when are you going to give me more? Well, it might be when we come to that place of saying, God, I'm trustworthy. That you can bless me with more because I have proven myself to be trustworthy, that I'm going to be someone who's going to live according to your word and according to your ways, even in the moments when I am tested. And so Joseph had to be tested. He went through the temptation by Potiphar's wife, but guess what? He passed the test. And because he passed the test, then he could be blessed. And some of us are waiting on the blessings, and God's going, no. First, you got to pass the testing. And when you prove that you are trustworthy, then I can add my blessings. But there is a process that I take you through, and temptation is an opportunity in that process to show God, I am trustworthy. God, you can trust me. In fact, this is what James was talking about in James chapter 1 and verse number 12. Blessed is the man who endures what? Temptation. For when he has been what? Approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those that love him. What does this say? It's saying exactly what I'm I'm talking about today. Those who face temptation, guess what? They will be blessed if they do what? If they endure the temptation, because the temptation is an opportunity to be approved, to prove ourselves so that we can receive the crown of life that God wants to bring in our lives. The blessings are coming, but only when we have gone through the test and proved ourselves to be trustworthy to experience the blessings that God has on our life. Am I being too deep for y'all today, or are y'all getting this? Some of you are going, why am I going through the testing? Why am I experiencing all this temptation that's all around me? Maybe it's an opportunity to show what's in your heart so that you can surrender that, so that you can guard that. Maybe it's an opportunity to grow. Maybe God's saying, this is an area of your life that I want you to grow, and so I'm allowing even the temptations that you face to be used to help you to grow so that you can show that you are trustworthy and you can experience the crown of life, the blessings that I want to have on your life. How many of you want to have all those blessings? How many of you want, come on, to be like Joseph and you want to pass the test? So how do we do it? Well, let me just give you a little strategy here today. I want us to look at Joseph, and I want you to see his strategy for proving himself trustworthy, his strategy for passing the test of temptation. If you're taking notes, you can just write them down. The first one is this, is you got to magnify the cost. You got to count the cost. What's at stake here? In fact, look what happens in verse number 7. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me, but he refused. With me in charge, listen to this. He told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? I want you to notice this. Joseph had a lot to lose. Come on, he was in charge of the whole household of Potiphar. Potiphar had trusted him. He had put everything in his care. He was in charge of all of this stuff. So if he would have broke Potiphar's trust, come on, it could have cost him everything that he had. And here's the deal, is that when you're in that moment of temptation, can I tell you, the enemy, here's what he wants you to do. He wants you to focus on the momentary feeling. He wants you to focus on the momentary pleasure, and he wants to make sure that you're not focusing on the long-term consequences. But I want to give you a strategy. Next time you're tempted, here's what I want you to do. I want you to magnify the cost. In fact, I want to ask you today, if you give in to whatever that area of temptation it is that you're facing that struggle, let me just ask you, how much would it cost you? If you break the trust of your wife, how much will that cost you? If you break the trust of your children, of your family, of your boss, how much will that cost you? Those of you that are leaders, if you break the trust of the people that you lead, what will the cost be? Even more than that, in fact, the last verse that he said there, he said, how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? You know what he was doing? He was magnifying the cost. He wasn't just going, hey, I can't break the trust of Potiphar. He was saying, I can't break God's trust. I can't lose the favor of God on my life. So let me ask you, how much would it cost you if you lose the favor of God on your life? You got to magnify the cost. When you're faced with those temptations, you got to go, man, I don't want to lose the trust of my friends and my family and my spouse. I don't want to lose the favor of God on my life. It's never worth it. Magnify the cost. Number 2, here's what you do. You move the line. Everybody say, move the line. Check this out, verse 10. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. Listen to this. Joseph didn't go, well, I'm growing my character, so I'm just going to hang out with Potiphar's wife because she's kind of cute and she likes me and I feel all tingly when I'm around her, and it's going to grow my character every time I say no. No! What did he do? He moved the line. He said, I'm not even going to be around her. I'm going to keep away from her as much as possible. I'm not going to try to just stick around and build my character. I've got to move the line. And how do you move the line? I'll tell you how you move the line. You have to pre-decide. You have to decide now. See, the moment to decide whether you're going to give in to temptation or not is not in the moment of temptation. The moment to decide is way before that. You make the decision. And you set some boundaries. And you say, here's some lines that I'm not going to cross. Here's some boundaries that I've placed in my life. Here's some values that I'm going to live. Here's some places I'm not going to go, some things that I'm not going to watch. I have already made the decision. I have already set the boundaries. And the more clearly you set the boundaries, the easier it will be to say no when you're in those moments of temptation. You move the line. Some of us try to get as close to the line as we possibly can. Oh, let me just get over here. I'm not going to fall off, but I'm going to get over here as close as I can. Some of y'all think I'm going to fall off when I get like up here when I'm preaching. And some of y'all, that's the way you live your life. No wonder you keep falling into temptation. Keep getting close to the line. In fact, it reminds me of this story I heard about a rich man who was hiring a limo driver. And he interviewed a couple of different guys to test out their driving skills. And he took them onto this very dangerous cliffside highway, and they had to drive the highway to just see how skilled they were in their driving. And so the first guy, he was a race car driver, and he drove very fast, and he got as close to the edge as he possibly could. He wanted to show the man how good of a driver that he was. But the second guy was a professional stuntman, and he could drive as close as the race car driver, but instead he decided to drive as far away from the edge as he possibly could, going extremely slow. And the man doing the hiring asked the second guy, hey, why'd you take the approach that you took? And the man said, because I knew that you were an important man and that your family would be riding in this limo, and they are very valuable cargo. So I wanted to stay as far away from danger as I possibly could. Who do you think got the job? Come on, the second guy, right? And this is what I'm talking about. Some of us need to decide, man, this is important. The costs are high. I cannot afford to break the trust of the people that I love. I cannot afford to lose the favor of God on my life, so I'm going to stay as far away as I possibly can. Maybe some of you are struggling with alcohol, and that's the temptation. You move the line. You say, I'm not going to go where they're serving alcohol. I'm not going to be hanging out at the bar. I'm not going to be going to the football gathering where they're drinking beer. No, I'm struggling in that area, so I'm going to move the line back as far as I can. Come on. I spend too much money. All right, I'm going to turn off Amazon. You know what I mean? Stop scrolling through that. Man, I'm struggling with the bad attitude. Okay, I'm going to stop hanging out with those people that have bad attitudes and that are critical and that, come on, right? I'm struggling with sexual temptation. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create some boundaries. I'm not going to be alone with a woman who's not my wife. I'm not going to get online when people aren't around. Come on, I'm going to put some things on my computer to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable and that others are holding me accountable. Why? Because the cost is great. God is saying, I want to bless you, but I got to know, can I trust you? And when you prove trustworthy, then we can experience His blessings on our lives. So we got to magnify the cost. We got to move the line. Number 3, finally, you got to make your escape. Make your escape. Check it out, verse 11. One day, however, no one else was around. When he went to do his work, she came and grabbed him by the cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. But Joseph tore himself away. He left his cloak in her hand and ran from the house. Check this out. Sometimes the best strategy for dealing with temptation is simply run. It's like my mentor, Mr. Miyagi, says. Sometimes best defense, no be there. Right? Sometimes when you're faced with temptation, the best way to overcome the temptation is get away from it. Run as fast and as far as you can. In fact, look what Paul writes about it in 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 18. We should flee from sexual immorality. Some of you are struggling in this area. That was the temptation for Joseph. I don't want to make it all about that because there's all kinds of temptations, but some of you, that is the temptation. You know what the answer is? Flee. Flee from sexual immorality. Run as fast and as far as you can from that person that you're feeling tempted by, from that person that you're feeling drawn to, from that person who's like, oh, we're just having lunch. She's not my wife. My wife doesn't know about it, but no big deal. No, run. Flee. There's too much at stake. Too much of a cost. Set the boundary. Get away as far as fast as you can. Jesus said it like this in Matthew chapter 5, verse 29. So if your eye, even your good eye, causes you to lust, gouge it out, throw it away. For it is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your hand, even your stronger hand, causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. For it is better for you to lose one part of the body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Now listen, Was Jesus talking literally, like cut your hand off, poke your eye out? No. I mean, if he was, we'd have a bunch of one-armed cyclopses running around. I'm just saying. But here's what he was saying. He was saying, deal severely with anything that causes you to sin. Stay away from it. Flee from it. Don't get close to it. There's too much at stake. So let me ask you, what temptation do you need to run from today? Is it a group of friends? Is it shows you're watching on TV? Is it websites that you're visiting? Is it influences on social media? What area of your life do you need to say, man, I'm going to magnify the cost? I'm going to move the line. I'm not even going to get close. I'm going to get way over here. I'm going to make my values clear, my boundaries defined. And when the temptation comes, man, I'm not going to stick around and go, let me grow from it. No, I will grow from it when I say no to it and I get away from it. Why? Because God has great things. I know some of you are going, how is this a New Year's series? I came going, man, it's going to be the greatest year ever. That's what I expected to hear at church as we go into New Year. Well, let me tell you something. It can be the greatest year ever. But the way that it's going to be the greatest year ever is if you live God's way, not the world's way. If you determine, I'm going to live God's way, not my own way. And when you pass the test, I'm telling you, we're going to hear it. We're going to see it later with Joseph's life. At the end, he passed all the tests, and he did experience the dream. He did receive the blessings, and it was worth it. Come on. He was so glad that he didn't fall into the temptations, that he didn't give in the times of testing, that he didn't give up when it took so long. Because in that moment, he received the blessings. And I'm just telling you, God has that for you this year. But there will be testing. There will be temptation. And God can be trusted in the middle of it. But he wants to know, can you be trusted? Can I trust you to pour out my blessings on your life? I'm just telling you, I don't know about you. I know I want this for you. But even more than that, I want it for me. God, I want all that you have for me. I want to experience the dream that you have for my life. And so God, even in the moments when I'm tested, I'm committed. Come on, I'm committed to passing the test and being a person who is trustworthy. And that's what I want for every one of you today.
Thank you for joining us online today. Make sure and hit subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for more notifications. We can't wait to engage with you this week.